night.
It's a win-win situation.
This is The Cash In.
Straight cash, homie.
On Sports Map Radio, here's Jason Page.
Let's go! Time to do it on this Friday edition of the program. Good to have you along for the ride. Thank you, Chad Erickson, for that welcome introduction. We got a lot to do over the next 3 hours. Over my left shoulder, barely visible, is the Mets getting destroyed. We'll get into that coming in a couple of minutes. A very busy opening hour to the shoe. We will talk with Jen Mueller. Root Sports does a great job on the Mariners and the Seahawks all season long. So we'll talk to her coming up in a few and see what the reaction was in Seattle to the Mariners win today. No surprise here. If you listened, I told you. Mariners are I think, the most dangerous team in this postseason. I think they are the best value bet. They were going off at plus 3,000 to win the World Series, and that doesn't mean I think they're going to win the World Series. It means they're the best value bet. Best bang for the buck you were going to get in this postseason is the Mariners. Will they win the World Series? Probably not, but they were the best bang for the buck. Mike Wilner, columnist and podcaster with the Toronto Star, will also join us in this hour. We're going 2 guests in 1 hour. We don't ever do that, but we're doing it in this one. We'll get the Mariners side of things, the Blue Jays side of things, and I would love to know what Max Scherzer's side of things are. Not a very tasty start for him. And if I sound like I'm smiling, it's because I am. Not because it's the Mets, but because this is what happens when you put all your eggs in the basket of 2 guys. And that's what the Mets did. That's exactly what the Mets did. They put all their eggs in the Scherzer-DeGrom basket and said, hey, and guess what? Those guys weren't getting paid for what they do in the regular season. They're getting paid for this. They're getting paid for the postseason. And Scherzer laid an egg. There's no getting around it. The Warriors story had an interesting turn today with the video coming out of Draymond Green being a thug, a punk. We'll get into that. Where might OBJ wind up, too? I'm getting to all of it. Just getting started. Friday edition of the Cash In on Sports Map Radio. Stay with us. Yep. You there, Vlad? Blah, 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 blah.
Wait, why do I see your face?
Because I am allowing you to see my face.
Oh.
That way, if you're talking and the backtime music is playing, I can signal you. I don't need to see you.
Oh.
Just you can see
yeah.
me. So, there it is. As long as it doesn't cause any issues on your end.
How was Jen? Good. The best.
I love
Great.
her. I
Of
love
course.
her.
She's the best.
All right, Jen Mueller coming up in 13 minutes. Root Sports covers the Mariners, covers the Seahawks. She's getting ready to go out and cover the Seahawks and the Saints this weekend, so we'll get some thoughts with her coming up in about 13 minutes. And then Mike Wilner will join us, columnist and podcaster with the Toronto Star. We'll get the Blue Jays side of things. My God, did you see the pitch Andre Munoz threw today? 103 miles an hour. Oh, man. Vlad Guerrero just looked at, what am I going to do with that? I got no chance against that. I actually think I have a couple of his autograph cards when he was a nobody in the Padres system. They gave up on him after I think he had Tommy John, if I'm not mistaken. And he winds up on the Mariners, and the kid's 23 years old, and he could throw 103. Who gives up on that? How do you give up on that arm? Instead, you got Josh Hader. Of course, you don't need to worry about Josh Hader when you're up 7-1 in the seventh inning, as the Padres are. So let's talk about this for a second. All right, let's hash this out. Mets fans, you're probably all ticked off right now. You're probably all bent out of shape. But you should not be angry with Max Scherzer. You got to hear me. I know they booed him going off the mound. They could have booed him a lot worse, quite honestly. I thought they were kind of kind, considering it's a best of three, and you just gave away game one with your $43 million pitcher. Yes, you heard me right. He makes $43 million. But I said this earlier in the year, and I got killed for it on social media. And I'll say it again. I was right. I don't often take victory laps joyously and rejoice at other teams losing. I'm not that fan. I'm not that guy. You know, like Met fans, the idea of a Mets fan's successful season is any season where the Yankees don't win a World Series. That's the idea of a successful season if you're a Mets fan. They don't care what they do, as long as the Yankees didn't win the World Series. Red Sox fans are the same way. Successful season? Oh, the Yankees didn't win the World Series. That's the way Red Sox fans and Mets operate. And when you're a Yankee fan, you're kind of punching down if you're taking shots at them, so it's not worth it. But I said back in like May that it was idiotic for the Mets, for any team, to spend $43 million on a guy that's going to play at once every 5 days, if you're lucky. And in the case of Scherzer, it was less than that because he was hurt for part of the year. And I think DeGrom makes like $27 million. I think combined they're making $70 million. Of the Mets' $760 million payroll, 30% of it is being spent on two guys that play once every 5 days, if healthy. And this is what happens when you put all your eggs in the pitching basket. And make no mistake about it, the Mets did that because they weren't paying Max Scherzer $43 million to beat the Pirates in May. They were paying him $43 million to win this game. They were paying him $43 million to beat the Braves last weekend. That's what they're paying him that for. And that's what they're paying Jacob deGrom for. Not to, beat the Marlins in June or July in front of 7,000 people in Florida. That's not what they're doing. They're paying him for this moment, the best of three, where you've got Scherzer and you've got deGrom. And I'm curious to see what Buck does now. Does he panic for game two? Is it going to be deGrom? Because he was talking about Bassett in game two and deGrom in game three. What's he going to do? Who do you start? Your season is on the line, and now the attention's going to shift to Buck. Because if you lose game two and your season ends without Jacob deGrom even starting a postseason game, I don't care how many games the Mets won in the regular season. I don't care how nice a story it was that 66-year-old Buck Showalter taking off the scrap heap, getting an opportunity to manage the other New York team. Yes, that's what they are. They're the other New York team. And this is why they're the other New York team, because as excited as Mets fans were, as pumped up as Citi Field was tonight, this is what the Mets have done in perpetuity to their fans. That's what this franchise does. They get you all excited, and they're finally good. The turnaround's here. We've got Mad Max. They don't. And then he gives up 7. 7. And I don't want to hear, oh, before the game, it looked like he was shaking something off in the bullpen. And maybe he's not 100%. He's out there. I don't want to hear it. This is a terrible Game 1 performance. Of all the games today, this is the one that you yell about the loudest. 1-800-224-2004. I should throw out the phone number. 1-800-224-2004. You want to tweet at the show? You can do it at the back page. Hit me up on Twitter at the back page if you've got something you want to weigh in on as we go through the 3 hours that is this show. And by the way, if you want to win anything that we give away on the show, every Wednesday we do giveaways. All you got to do is follow me on Twitter. Go to Twitter right now at the back page. Follow me. You'll be eligible to win. Every Wednesday we give something away. That's how you win. Simple as that. Embarrassing performance by the Mets. Not by the Blue Jays and the Mariners. Well, the Mariners anyway. Not by the Mariners. Not by the Indians. Maybe by the Cardinals, who basically did everything wrong you can. I mean, they played a great game for 8 innings, and then in the 9th inning, they forgot how to play baseball. They lost to the Phillies, who put up a huge spot in the 9th inning and are able to win 6-3 in Game 1 of that series. Bit of a surprise. I like the Cardinals in that series. See how they respond in Game 2. How do you respond if you're the Mets after getting blasted in Game 1? And I know people are going to say, well, it's the 7th inning, 8th inning. It ain't over yet. It's over. Stick a fork in them, Jerry. They're done. But the Mariners have to be the story. I said it. Look, this is a team that's playing with house money. First time in the playoffs in over 20 years. They got fans sitting out at T-Mobile Park watching the game in the stands today as they're playing in Toronto. Telling you, Seattle's got the chance to be the story of the postseason. Who knows how long it lasts? But let this be said. Think of all the moves that happened at the trade deadline. Juan Soto, oh my goodness, who's going to get him? It's the biggest trade of all time at the deadline. And Juan Soto was pretty pedestrian once he got to San Diego in the second half of the year. Now, you want to ask me, do I want him for the next 7 years on my team? Of course I do. But if you're talking about impact at the trade deadline, that move didn't have a huge impact for the second half of the season. Not at all. You know what the Mets did at the trade deadline? They got Daniel Vogelbach. They went and got Darren Ruff. I mean, really. That's what they did to enhance their team at the trade deadline. But you know what the Mariners did? They made what this will absolutely turn out to be one of the most impactful trade deadline deals in recent memory when you look at how good Luis Castillo has been for this team. 1-800-224-2004. He was dominant today for 7 1/3 innings. Jen Mueller coming up on the other side. On the cash-in, I'm Jason Page. It's Sports Map Radio. All right, this is self-contained on my end. You got me, Austin? Okay. Hopefully I timed this out correctly.
All right. I sent you Wilner's number
Okay, thank you.
because I'm literally not gonna be on for the
Much
next
this
2
hour.
seconds.
Yeah. Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. We'll get the Blue Jays' perspective on the Game 1 loss today with Mike Wilner coming up a little later on. But let's get the Mariners side of it because that has got to be one happy team right now, being able to go into Toronto and get Game 1 of this divisional series, this wild card series, rather. Let's bring in our friend Jen Mueller, does a terrific job covering not just the Mariners, but the Seahawks. She does it all, gives us some time today on the Cash. And, I said before the postseason started, when I saw the odds come out and I saw the Mariners at plus 3,000, they were basically the longest odds of any team in the playoffs. Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. We'll get the Blue Jays' perspective on the Game 1 loss today with Mike Wilner coming up a little later on. But let's get the Mariners' side of it because that has got to be one happy team right now, being able to go into Toronto and get Game 1 of this divisional series, this wild card series, rather. Let's bring in our friend Jen Mueller, does a terrific job covering not just the Mariners, but the Seahawks. She does it all, gives us some time today on the Cash. And, I said before the postseason started, when I saw the odds come out and I saw the Mariners at plus 3,000, they were basically the longest odds of any team in the playoffs. And I said, man, for a value bet, it doesn't mean they're going to win. I'm just saying best bang for your buck bet. I thought it was the Mariners, and I watched the way they played today. That didn't look like a team that was scared of the moment, Jen.
No, it didn't. And I think this is where youth plays to Seattle's advantage. And having guys that don't have a whole lot of postseason experience, I know they don't know what to expect, but sometimes being naive and not playing this moment up to be too big really works to their advantage. I also think the fact that it is a 3-game series helps to just kind of keep that same familiarity. I realize it is a win or go home series, and now you are one win away from advancing. But when you just kind of think about the rhythm of a baseball season, going to Toronto and expecting to play up to 3 games, well, that's no different than any other series they've had this year. So I think, youthful naivete and the schedule kind of helps to settle things down for the Mariners. Well, and then there was Luis Castillo.
And I'm so glad you mentioned him because I was thinking about it today as I was walking back from the car to the condo. This was literally when I thought about it. That's why I say it. And I'm sitting there walking back, and I said to myself, was there a more impactful trade deadline move than Luis Castillo? And Juan Soto got all the headlines, and rightly so. Yep. He's a 5-tool player, and I know he didn't play well when he got to San Diego, but there's no doubt he's got a great future ahead of him. A lot of people would agree. But in terms of impact, I don't think there was a more impactful deal than this one when you look at what he's done for the top of that rotation. And again, you talk about a guy that's just fearless, and that's the one word that comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that he flew under the radar just a little bit at the trade deadline because of the team that he was playing with, right? The Reds just weren't any good. So you weren't really looking or giving as much credence maybe to his results than you were to a guy like Juan Soto, who, of course, was putting up numbers and perhaps had a bigger name. But what Luis Castillo has done has been really consistent. It has been very impressive. And today he goes over 7 innings for the second time as a Mariner. And if you look at last year's postseason, and I will give Sarah Langs credit for this on Twitter, look at last postseason. There were 4 times that the starters went 7+ innings. There were 3 instances of that. Today alone, Luis Castillo was one of them, and that is not an outlier for him. He typically goes 6 innings. Looks like he could go more. And boy, he just looks so sharp, man. He's hitting 99 in the first inning. Okay, I would really hate to be those Jays hitters.
And it feels like all the pressure basically shifts to Toronto here. They didn't score a single run in this game. And you got to feel right now, if you're the Mariners, I don't want to say you're playing with house money, but you're certainly find yourself in a situation now where and look, I mean, in a best of 3, there really is no time to let up, but you watch the way this team played today, and I think you got to feel good about where they're positioned here over the final 2 games. And by the way, I didn't even get to it. How about Andres Munoz? Now, I got to look at him for the first time. I got to look at him for the first time when they played against the Yankees, because I watch all the Yankee games out here on the West Coast. I got the MLB.TV package. And I watched him against the Yankees, and I mean, talk about my eyes being open to this guy. I know he's still young, and a lot of people don't know him.
23.
He threw 103 today and had Vlad Guerrero shaking his head. I mean, my God, this kid is just amazing.
Well, and remember that he was coming off of Tommy John surgery. The Mariners had no idea what to expect from him in spring training. They are hoping, or they were at the time, that he would be the flamethrower that he had been in the Padres organization. He was part of a trade a couple of years ago, but he didn't actually show anything because of the arm injuries until this year. So they were really working him in slowly, and it was low leverage at first, and he wasn't going back to back, and he wasn't pitching more than an inning. And now you talk about the growth and the trust and the stuff and the accuracy. Today was a perfect culmination of all of that. High leverage, game 1 in a playoff game. You turn to the 23-year-old to finish this one out. He is truly impressive, and his stuff is nasty. You're not going to catch up to 103, and that slider so devastating. Your swing decision has to be made so soon, and then the bottom's going to drop out of it. I mean, yeah.
Talking to our friend Jem Mueller, covers the Seahawks and the Mariners. Root Sports does a terrific job. Hey, a thought on Robbie Ray, because, again, we don't see a ton of Mariners baseball throughout the year. Give me some thoughts on what he was like during the regular season. I know he had a ton of strikeouts. I think he was 5th in the American League in strikeouts. Talk a little bit about his season and kind of what makes him right or not for this moment.
Yeah, I think he's right for this moment because he has played in some big games before, and he's got the right temperament for it. He is also skilled and veteran enough to know how to work himself out of trouble. We have seen that during the course of the year. Now, here's been his bugaboo, and it's not been the case as much lately, but he will run into just a long inning. He'll be cruising along through 3 innings, maybe 4 innings, and then things will get out of control for an inning, and he'll bring him right back on track. Now, the offense can't necessarily back him with the runs needed, but that's kind of the one thing. He's got to stay away from the big inning. But he's made in-game adjustments that are absolutely brilliant, like adding a 2-seamer during the middle of the game against the Astros when Houston was all over him. And then that turns out to be a huge pitch for him to be able to really own both sides of the plate. So I don't think the moment is too big. He is familiar playing in the Rogers Center, having been a Toronto Blue Jay. He is familiar with the swings of his former teammates. I think he is the great game, too. And I do think the Mariners, to some extent, are playing with house money. The general vibe and feel from the fan base is you broke the streak, right? There was a streak of 21 straight years where you were not in the playoffs. The fan base, I don't want to say that they're satisfied, but they're happy, right? Would you like to see them continue to advance and get deep just like this team believes that they can do? Absolutely. But the fan base is happy right now. So you are in some regards playing with house money for games 2 and 3.
All right. I know you cover the Seahawks as well, getting set to head off to New Orleans to watch them take on the Saints. Just before I get to Seattle in this game, what's the vibe or the reaction of fans? And you talk to people, you talk to the organization, you talk to players. What's the feel around this whole Russell Wilson situation? I mean, somebody's got to be asking people about it up there, about the fact that he does not look himself right now when you watch him with the Denver Broncos, whether it's new head coach, whether it's new plays being called, whether it's new set of receivers. It's just not clicking. What's the feeling in Seattle around this?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, if I were to point to some numbers and you say, well, it doesn't look like Russell Wilson, there are a couple of numbers that look like Russell Wilson. Their third down conversion numbers are pretty bad. Seattle was not converting over 50%. Heck, they were converting at about 40% or less in each of the last 6 or 7 years. Seattle's now converting at 55% on third down. So what you saw last night, we have seen that for stretches in Seattle. It just didn't look the same necessarily. Also, the number of times Russ has been sacked, that has been pretty consistent. And I don't think it's as much on the offensive line as people here in Seattle wanted to make it. I think the biggest reaction is there was conversation at the end of last year about, is it Pete or is it Russ? Which one should go? Should Pete go? Should Russ go? Who should have more power in the organization, sort of thing? When Russ left, I think there was a general sentiment of, oh, perhaps they kept the wrong guy. I mean, do you really want Pete Carroll continuing? Because his philosophy appears to be old school. And I think right now what you're seeing is Pete's philosophy works and Pete's coaching works. And Geno Smith can execute the offense. And, maybe it wasn't quite the picture that they thought it was when Russ was here. He is still beloved in the community for the things that he did. But, on a football basis, yeah, there's a lot of fans that might be gloating just a little bit. And they love seeing Geno. The offense looks totally different without Russ. The tight ends are more involved. There's a lot of short yardage plays. But, I don't think there's as many fans as all knotted up over that trade anymore.
I got about 30 seconds here. People are talking about Geno now as a sort of a dark horse MVP candidate with the way he's played.
It's a little early.
It is a lot early, but I mean, he has played that kind of spectacular football. Some people watching the games might be a little bit surprised. Are people in Seattle surprised?
Yes, absolutely. Not what they expected, but they love it. Right? 2-2. You look at that and people are pleasantly surprised. Yep, absolutely.
Jen Mueller, I love you. Covers the Seahawks and the Mariners. Hey, have a safe trip to New Orleans. We'll talk to you down the line. Always appreciate it, my friend.
All right. Take care. Thanks so much.
Love Jen Mueller giving us some time on the show. All right, we'll come back, get some thoughts. Are you surprised? Yep, we are. 800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. We'll hear from Mike Wilner coming up in a few minutes on the Blue Jays side of things. He covers them north of the border. Against the Seattle Mariners. And now you're talking about a situation where, I mean, all the pressure is on them. I do still think some pressure is on the Blue Jays. I mean, look, or rather on the Mariners. You're one win away from getting into a postseason series where you're going to be able to have at least some fans in your own ballpark. Been over 20 years. Mike Wilner, Toronto Star, on the other side, talking Blue Jays and the other side of this series as we continue on the cash-in. A morbid commercial. With us, Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. Mets trail 7-1 in the eighth inning. Looks like game one will go to the Padres. Max Scherzer getting destroyed. So $43 million gets you sometimes. So what happens when you put all your eggs in that pitching basket like the Mets did. All right, let's talk about another series, this one involving the Mariners and the Blue Jays. We just heard the Seattle side of it with Jen Mueller, who does a great job with Root Sports. Now we say hello to Mike Wilner. God, I haven't talked to this guy in probably about 6 years. Does a terrific job. Toronto Star columnist there, also a podcaster as well. All right, let's talk about it, Mike. Game one obviously didn't go the way the Blue Jays had hoped. Alex Manoah kind of got bombarded in the first inning. You get the early home runs, and really Toronto never able to recover against Luis Castillo, who's been so good all season long. What's the reaction like in Toronto after the game one loss?
I mean, you pretty much just said it. That's exactly what happened. Matt Chapman said after the game that they got punched in the face, and we'll have to see how they recover. Look, you're right. Luis Castillo has been really, really good, and he was phenomenal today. He's throwing 100-mile-an-hour sinkers and 100-mile-an-hour four-seamers, huge movement, and he just dominated a really, really good hitting team. And as good as Castillo was this season, Alek Manoah was better. Manoah finished fourth in the big leagues in ERA with, I think, 224 or something like that, 242. He was a pitcher of the month in September, and he gave up 3 runs in the first inning to the first 4 hitters. I'm not sure he had given up a run in the first inning at home all year. So they just jumped on him early. He settled down, but the hole was too big the way Castillo was pitching.
Yeah, it certainly was. And look, I mean, we know how good this Blue Jays lineup is. And quite honestly, if you had told me that the top four in the Blue Jays lineup, would you get 2 of 3 out of Springer, Bichette had a hit, Kirk had a hit, Chapman had a couple hits. It wasn't as if they didn't string any hits together, but they just didn't seem like they could get any sort of sustained rally in this game.
Yeah, one of the big problems was that out of the 7 hits they got, 6 of them came with 2 out. And when you're trying to start a rally with 2 out and nobody on, it's going to be really, really hard to score runs. That was the story today. I mean, the Jays, there were 2 innings in which they had runners at first and second, but with 2 out after starting with 2 out and nobody on. So had they been able to get that hit, and they were in the right spot for it, at one time it was Bichette, and the other time it was Vlad, but Castillo made the pitches he had to make, and the Blue Jays really never put themselves in a position where, they had a runner in scoring position with less than 2 outs, or a runner at third with less than 2 outs, where you didn't need a hit to drive them in, and it's not exactly a formula for success.
Is there? I mean, look, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow if the Blue Jays will get a winning game 2. I know they get Guzman going, and we know how good and reliable he's been. I don't know what happens when all is said and done with this series. Maybe the Mariners maybe the Blue Jays come back. They get the next 2. I thought this was kind of a bad matchup for them. I liked the Mariners coming into this postseason and the way they were playing. Let's just play hypothetical here for a second, though. If the Blue Jays wind up losing this series, okay, they drop game 1. Let's just say they wind up losing the series. Where does this team go in terms of upgrading for next season so that maybe they're not in the position of having to be a wild card? Maybe they could figure out a way to win the division because, look, I know they've changed the wild card to best of 3, and it's great to not have a one-and-done situation, but it's still a bit of a crapshoot even in a best of 3, even with home field advantage. Where does this team go in terms of trying to improve itself if this does wind up going the way that Blue Jay fans hope it doesn't?
Well, I mean, I think you just sort of keep building with what you're building with. Remember, like this team is 2 full seasons ago, they lost 95 games. And put that young core to work and just let them go. You're locked in right now, but you're locked in with some really good players. You have Alejandro Kirk behind the plate, who was an all-star in his first year in the big league. You have Vladdy at first, who was 23 years old and almost an MVP last year. They picked up Whit Merrifield to play second base, and he's really come on lately. Bichette, Matt Chapman, George Springer, Oscar Hernandez, back-to-back Silver Sluggers. So they're in really good shape, and all these guys are coming back. They will need some help in the starting rotation. I mean, Manoah, Guzman, and Jose Barrios is a very, very good front 3, but Ross Stripling, who had a phenomenal year this year, stepping into the breach when Hyunjin Ryu got hurt, is a free agent. And I would be surprised if some team doesn't sweep him off his feet. So they're going to need a starter or 2. Ryu's going to be out next year too, probably. But other than that, things are looking pretty good. And you just let the kids continue to grow. You've got a core of really good 23 and 24-year-olds. They might have won the AL East this year if the Yankees hadn't run away and hit. The Yankees had a 16.5-game lead on them by the middle of July, and they came back to the pack a bit. There's really nothing you can do about that. Sure, the goal is to win divisions, absolutely, but sometimes you just can't. And this year, nobody in the AL East could. So I think you just continue on the track that you're on, find yourself another good starting pitcher to add to that group next year, and let it roll.
Mike Wilner, Toronto Star, joining us here on the Cash In Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map radio app. You know what the other thing is? They're a victim of, I hate saying this because it sounds like I'm a cop-out for them, but it's true. they're a victim of the division they're in. I mean, there's not I know the Red Sox had a down year, but you look at what the Orioles are doing. I mean, you've got so many good teams in that division, and the Orioles are going to be good for a while. You know that Tampa Bay is always going to put a representative product on the field in the bizarre way they do it. The Red Sox aren't going to lay down and roll over after a down season. You know what the Yankees are. And part of the problem is they're in such a tough division.
Yeah, but you would think that would, make them a little bit tougher for the playoffs too, and it very likely could. I mean, we're talking about they're one game in, but they have to. And next year will be different because the schedule is changing.
Yep,
they won't have to play like a third of their schedule against those 4 teams. But you're absolutely right about the East. You mentioned the Red Sox had a down year, but if you throw out what the Red Sox did against the Blue Jays this year, Boston was above 500 too. So, the Jays went 16-3 against them, and the Red Sox, I think, were, 7-8 games over 500 against everybody else in the major league. So you're dealing with a division with 5 winning teams in it, and it does sort of harden you up. And I think the 92 wins that the Blue Jays put up are probably worth a lot more in most other divisions, and they probably win most other divisions that they're playing in. Houston won 106 games, but they had 54 games against the Angels and the Rangers and the A's. The Jays had 0 division games against crappy teams. So, their wild cardness is a result, or definitely has something to do with the division that they're in, for sure. But it also prepares them for the gauntlet, you hope.
For people who haven't seen a lot of Kevin Guzman this year, and I have because I'm one of these goofballs with the MLB package, and I watch just about every game that I possibly can. But for people who haven't seen a lot of him, obviously one of the top strikeout pitchers, give people a little bit of a scouting report and what makes him the right guy for this big Game 2 start.
Look, there's a reason they paid him $110 million over the winter to come in and replace the guy who won the Cy Young Award. Kevin Guzman has just a deadly split-fingered fastball. It comes out of his hand the same way as his fastball. It tunnels the same way, and then it falls right off the table. So that's the deal. Until the last second, you don't know if you're getting something straight at 97 or if you're getting something that's going to drop below your knees at 92. And if he can keep that pitch mix going and keep guys from figuring out what's what, he's going to have a lot of success.
Mike Wilner does a terrific job in Toronto, baseball columnist and podcaster, Toronto Star. Listen, sir, it's been a while. I appreciate you giving us a few minutes, and we'll see what happens in Game 2. Thank you very much.
Yeah, happy to be with you. Take care.
Absolutely. Mike Wilner giving us some time on the show. And look, man, they are in a tough spot in Game 2 because he mentions the Cy Young Award winner that Kevin Guzman replaced. And that's who the Toronto Blue Jays are facing in Game 2. Yep. Robbie Ray for the Mariners and Guzman for the Blue Jays. And, man, it'll be an interesting Game 2 tomorrow. 12:08 p.m. Eastern. I'm sorry, not 12:08, my bad. 4:08 p.m. Eastern at Rogers Center for the Mariners and the Blue Jays. Rays and Guardians, I'll tell you, it was a heck of a game. That is old school postseason baseball. Low scoring. A couple of teams that don't necessarily score a lot of runs, and one swing of the bat was the difference off the bat of Jose Ramirez. That's why, to me, that series was just one I didn't feel comfortable if I wouldn't have put a wager on it. Because neither of those teams are going to score a ton of runs, and you're literally talking one swing of the bat in a 9-inning game being the difference. And if you watched the games today, that hasn't been the case in really any other game. The Padres put a ton of good swings on Max Scherzer. The Mariners really ran away in the first inning with the 3-run lead and then said, Luis Castillo, go ahead and do your worst. And he did. And, Phillies Cardinals, it was basically the entire ninth inning for the Phillies that led them to victory. So it's very difficult to pick some of these closer series. I loved the Mariners. I still love the Cardinals. What happened in the ninth inning today, notwithstanding. 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. You can hit me up on Twitter if you feel so inclined. At the back page again, hit me up on Twitter. At the back page, we'll see what happens in these games. Mets still trail 7-1. That game is in the top of the ninth. So the Padres are going to get an easy game in game one. The Mets have said that Jacob deGrom will pitch game two if they lost tonight. And could you imagine if the Mets, oh my goodness, can you imagine if the Mets lose this series? A best of three, and the two games that you lose are started by Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom. People are going to lose their minds in New York. They're going to lose their minds in New York if both of those guys wind up being the losing pitchers in a best of three series where you're hosting both games. And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you who's happiest in this scenario. It's the LA Dodgers. So they don't get the Mets. I think they'd be thrilled to not have to play the Mets in the next round. We'll come back, wrap up this hour of the Cash In. I'm Jason Page at Sports Map Radio.
Struck him out swinging. And the fist pump to go with it. Beyond that.
All right, getting set to wrap up hour number 1 of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio, Sports Map Radio app. Next hour, they're worried about the leaker instead of what the actual video footage showed. Man, it's just amazing what is allowed and tolerated by some professional sports organizations. Where might OBJ wind up? We'll tackle that. Eric Pincus will join us from Bleacher Report, talk some NBA in the next hour as well. Hey, if you have not done so yet, go and sign up, download the app, Jock MKT. Basically, it's the jock market. You've heard of the stock market? This is the jock market. Your chance to go and invest in the players you love. And you don't have to do it for a long time. Just do it for a weekend of games. Just do it for the weekend of NFL action. Just do it for a day of the baseball postseason. Instead of having to put together an entire team, you take your money, put it on the players you want, invest in them, and watch the money come in. It's as simple as that. Go and download the app right now, Jock MKT, and make sure to use my promo code CASHIN on your first cash deposit. You have to do it anywhere. On the app, you'll see the referral code. Cash In is the code you want to put in for your referral code. And just like that, you'll get a 100% deposit bonus. Simple as that. Up to $100, anywhere from $20 to $100. You put in $20, use my Cash In referral code, and guess what? You're going to get yourself an extra $20. You put in $100, you use that code, you're getting another $100 to play with. Do it. The weekend is right around the corner. You have a chance to go and stock up with your favorite players. Yep, Jock MKT. Download the app today or go to jockmkt.com. Jock MKT. Stay in the game here on the Cash In. Welcome to our first full-time sponsor on the show. The next hour of the Cash In is right around the corner. I told you what's ahead. Stick around. You're going to be upset if you miss it. I'm Jason Page. Glad to have you with us on this Friday edition of the Cash In. Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. All right, another hour starts right now. Sports Map Radio. The Sports Map Radio app. A lot to do in this hour. We will catch up with Eric Pincus, our good friend who covers the NBA for Bleacher Report. Also does a lot with salary cap and all that stuff. And get some thoughts with him on this Draymond Green story, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Where might OBJ wind up? We now have some clues. We were just talking about that on the show last night, and Marcus Spears put up something with basically 5 teams, and Beckham, well, we'll tell you what he said. That's coming up in a few minutes on the program. I want to get into this Draymond Green story. We'll do that coming up in a couple of minutes. You can weigh in as well. 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. You can also hit me up on Twitter at the back page. It's all over but the crying at Citi Field. The Mets trail 7-1 in the 9th inning. I had to turn around and look at my TV screen. Is it over yet? No, not yet. Jacob deGrom will get the start in Game 2 for the Mets. And again, I just can't even imagine what it would be like to be that Mets organization if you wind up losing this series in 2 games with Scherzer and deGrom being the guys that pitch those 2 games. Met fans are going to lose their minds. And again, it tells you about how you build rosters. You know, it all sounded great, the idea of getting Max Scherzer. Now, I'm not saying it was a terrible idea to do so, but here's the problem. If you're Stephen Cohen and you've got all this money and you're going to spend $260 million and this is the best you can do offensively with your team, that's a problem. That's a big problem. Now, Sandy Alderson kind of ducked out midway through the season. He was kind of like, peace out real quietly. And now he's like, hey, I'm not going to have to be here for the fallout of this thing. On the other side, we'll talk about the Warriors, the Draymond Green video, the leakage, and all that as we continue on Sports Map Radio. All right. Do. Really, Chalk Market's not available in Connecticut? 12 minutes past the hour. Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. Good to be hanging out with all of you. OBJ. Where might he land? We'll get into that coming up in about 13 minutes here on the program. I'm still in awe and stunned disbelief in the way this Draymond Green story had been handled by the Warriors organization. Now, here's an organization that, and look, for better or worse, depending on where you stand on the political side of the aisle, it's an organization that likes to, say they stand up for what's right, what's wrong. Steve Kerr speaks out on a lot of political issues. They have a certain way in which they handle themselves as an organization. But it seems they got a blind spot. They've got a blind spot when it comes to one of their own. And it makes me just wonder if they're a bunch of hypocrites. That do they really care about, distinguishing right and wrong, punishing, bad behavior, or is that just lip service because they play in a city that is uber liberal, have a fan base that is uber liberal, and they're sort of capitulating to the whims and wants and needs of that fan base, rather than do they really feel that way? Because when you get a Draymond Green type player, that guy doesn't really fit the image of what the Golden State Warriors like to portray themselves as. He's the bad boy. I mean, look, I'll just say it. He's a punk. He's been a punk. He's been that way for a while. The way he acts on the floor, the technical fouls. I mean, it's a selfish approach. And many times it has come at the expense of his team. Is he a good player? Yes. Is he a player you can win without, though? I also think the answer is yes. And sometimes it's addition by subtraction. But look, the Warriors have so much talent on their roster. This idea that, well, man, you can't overreact to the Draymond Green punch of Jordan Poole, because if you get rid of him or trade him or get him off to another team, you're going to regret it. The Warriors can win without him. My God, the Warriors won without Kevin Durant, for crying out loud. Stop it. Are you going to tell me Draymond Green is more important to the Warriors than Kevin Durant? If you are, you're an idiot. And here we are with another Draymond Green incident sitting in front of us, and the Golden State Warriors just doing all the wrong things as it relates to how they're handling it. Listen to the GM, Bob Myers, talking about Draymond Green.
I'll just tell you, he's been over that line. You know it. But he always comes back. And he's a unique guy. I mean, without him, we don't win.
You won without Kevin Durant. Stop it. Myers talking about Draymond Green. So if you don't know the whole story, I guess I should recap it a little bit. Practice on Wednesday morning. Draymond Green and Jordan Poole, who's one of the young up-and-coming stars in this game, guy who's going to be playing for a sizable contract this season, was a big part of the Warriors' success last year. Jordan Poole and Draymond Green were getting into it in practice. And what we didn't have originally was the video. All we had was the story that they were going at it, there was some shoving, and then Draymond, basically took a swing at him. What we didn't have before was the video, and video changes everything. The Warriors yesterday were going to basically say, yeah, we're probably not suspending him. We're going to handle it internally. Maybe we'll fine him. Maybe we'll have him sit out from practice for a couple of days, whatever. But there wasn't going to be any serious consequences. But as we've learned in America, video changes everything. And when you see the video of what transpired on Wednesday morning versus the story that was portrayed in the media, it doesn't match up. Now, granted, you're not seeing what comes before what I'm about to describe to you. But what you have is Draymond Green standing far away from Jordan Poole. You have Draymond Green walking over to Jordan Poole. Words are exchanged. Jordan Poole shoves Draymond Green, and then Draymond Green takes a sucker punch on him and hits him in the side of the face and really stuns Jordan Poole. Then all the players jump in, and that's basically all you get in the video. And again, you don't know what Jordan Poole said. I don't care what he said. Nothing can justify what Draymond Green did in that moment. But what's most stunning to me is the Warriors' approach to the fact that the video came out. The Warriors aren't talking about what we saw in the video. No. The Warriors are talking about the fact that TMZ got the video. Does that sound familiar? That's the kind of stuff and look, I'm not trying to get political here. But how many times do you hear people get mad about the leak of something rather than the importance and consequence of what is leaked? It's not something you typically hear from liberals or liberal-minded companies or organizations. You wouldn't hear that. So the Golden State Warriors, according to Ramona Shelburne and Adrian Wojnarowski, are taking, quote, every legal course of action to discover how the video from that practice of Draymond Green punching Jordan Poole was made public. That's what they're mad about. They're not mad about what Draymond Green did, which is what they should be mad about. No, they're mad about the fact that you all saw it. Because you're not supposed to see that stuff. You're not supposed to see how guys that are supposed to be professionals behave when the cameras aren't on. Friday morning, TMZ published it. And again, the practice was closed to the media. Green steps up to Poole, reacts, shoves him. Green punches him, knocks him down. And sources tell ESPN the Warriors are aggressively investigating both the incident and the release of the video. They don't care about the incident. Now they're going to care about the incident because you all saw the video. Now they may have to take action against Draymond Green. Because anybody who saw that, unless your name's Kendrick Perkins, and he's just like, oh, carry on. But again, these things happen, Myers said Thursday. Nobody likes it. We don't condone it, but it happens. Draymond apologized to the team. Jordan was there in the room. What does that mean? Does that mean Draymond didn't apologize to Jordan Poole? Jordan was there in the room. As far as any suspension, punishment, fine, we will handle that internally. Great look for the boy. Let me tell you, man. The NBA is batting 1,000 right now leading into the start of this season. The Robert Sarver story, the Ime Udoka story. Oh, there's an update on the Ime Udoka story, by the way. I'll get to it next hour. I mean, this league is batting 1,000 right now when it comes to PR to start the season. They can win without Draymond Green. There's so much talent on that team. Let him go somewhere else and be the punk. The Warriors should be better than that. And look, I don't know how guys do this. And granted, I've never been a professional athlete. So I'm speaking at it from a layperson standpoint. You know, I never made it further than CYO and playing in high school. And I never made it further than that. So granted, I don't understand the dynamic on that sort of elite level. How do you go to work every day if you're Jordan Poole and look that guy in the eye? It's not fair to Jordan Poole. I think you're setting up Jordan Poole to fail. They just got to go in and work with this idiot every day. That's what he is. I'm sorry. You can like Draymond Green all you want. It was a punk thug move. The Warriors don't need him. They can win without him. 1-800-224-2004. 800-224-2004. You want to hit me up on Twitter at The Back Page? Go ahead and do it. On Twitter, again, at The Back Page. And the only way you can win prizes on this show is if you're following me on Twitter. We do it every Wednesday. We do our Wednesday giveaways. All you have to do is follow me on Twitter at The Back Page. Send me a note, and you're eligible to win when we do our giveaways on Wednesdays. 800-224-2004. OBJ, where is Odell Beckham Jr. headed? We'll get into that. Any thoughts you may have on the Draymond Green story and more as we continue with the Cash In. I'm Jason Page. It's Sports Map Radio. The hell? Kill that.
What if you were a gigantic snack food maker who needs to...
All right, kill that.
Hello?
Yep.
You're so wrong.
No.
Yeah, it's not a sucker move.
It's absolutely a sucker move.
How is it a sucker move? Did he go behind him, or was he pushed first and then reacted? Because that's what you said, right?
I said exactly. I described it exactly how it happened.
If somebody pushes me, how is that a sucker move?
Somebody pushes you doesn't mean you take a swing at them.
You came in contact with me first.
So what? Doesn't mean you take a swing at them.
So what do you mean? Doesn't mean you pushed me first? You didn't push. It wasn't no slight push. You pushed me with force.
Yeah, he came at him, so he
whatever
shoved him
happens
away.
So whatever happens after that is what happens.
Absolutely not.
You'll continuously get pushed around. Somebody pushes you, you act exactly the way you react. You didn't touch that man first.
Well, we don't know what happened before that either.
What do you mean I don't know what happened before that? I'm going by what you said by the video.
I said you don't know what happened before that, before the video started rolling.
And there was no physical contact.
Don't know that.
Was words.
No, I'm saying you don't know what happened before. What I'm saying is we don't know what happened before the video started rolling. There was obviously a whole practice before that.
There was a bunch of words.
Don't know that.
There was a bunch
of
words.
You don't know that.
Said because you could. Yes, you can.
No, you don't.
You could see in the video words were being expressed.
You saw 10 seconds before the punch, Vlad.
Which is why you saw words being expressed. You saw Draymond.
Vlad, do you think that was the whole practice you saw?
Aggressively.
Was it the whole practice you saw?
I'm going by what the 10 seconds is.
Yeah, but that's stupid. That's idiotic.
So then you can't. So then by your meaning, if Jordan Poole was mouthing off to Draymond and exactly what he does, what happened, then would you come back and say, well, I didn't know what was going on. Now that we heard audio wise what happened, I can understand why Draymond punched Jordan Poole.
No.
Well, you're not going to be able to say that because you.
Of course
don't know
I can, because I know. You know what I do know? Jordan Poole didn't punch him.
Jordan Poole pushed him.
But you don't know what happened before that. Maybe Draymond pushed him during the practice.
Jordan Poole pushed him. Jordan Poole pushed him when Draymond walked towards him. Jordan Poole didn't go out and push him.
Vlad, there isn't a single person defending Draymond Green except for you right now. Do you realize that?
No, there's many people. No, there's many people defending Draymond Green.
Nobody.
Yes, they are.
Nobody is.
You guys don't know what a sucker punch is.
No, that's a sucker punch.
No, it's not a sucker punch.
It is.
Not if somebody gets in contact with the person first. If you touch
Hold
me
on,
first,
we'll come back. "26 minutes past the hour." Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. You can tweet at me at The Back Page. Eric Pincus coming up. Talk to him in about 14 minutes. Get some thoughts with him. Look, I don't know what the ultimate punishment is going to be for Draymond Green. It obviously doesn't sound like it's going to be much. I don't know if anything changes as a result of the video having been released. But in that spot, You could say whatever you want. Oh, Jordan Poole, shoved him first. Vlad and I were just talking about it off the air. Jordan Poole shoved him first. That doesn't mean you take a swing at somebody. There's a difference between shoving somebody and taking a swing at somebody. If Jordan Poole shoves him and Draymond Green shoves him back, everybody else jumps in and it's over. Instead, Draymond escalated it by throwing a punch. And that's the reality of the situation. There's no defense whatsoever for what Draymond Green does in that situation. Sorry, there's just not. And again, this is the way this guy's carried himself his whole career, and he gets away with it. You know why? The team wins. It's the same sort of thing I said about... It's the same sort of thing I talked about with Aaron Rodgers. It's the same exact thing, as a matter of fact, as what I've talked about with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers throws the football really well. So if he says stupid things when he's not on the field, if he, decides not to take a vaccine and tell everybody he's immunized, you're just going to get away with more because you win. That's the same thing with Draymond Green. I got news for you. Anybody listening in America right now, if Draymond Green played for the Houston Rockets, he would have been released. If he was playing for the Detroit Pistons all his career and didn't win squat, he'd be released. You know it. I know it. And that's how you know this is a BS move. If he was playing for the Washington Wizards, he would have been released. If he was playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder, he'd be released. The only reason that he can get away with it is because he's on a winning team with a winning organization that's willing to endure it. And that's not the way it should be. It is. Doesn't make it right. But that's how the Warriors want to conduct business. All I could do is call it out for what it is. All right. We'll talk with Eric Pincus about it. I'll be curious to see if he shares my opinion or if he disagrees. We'll get some thoughts with him coming up in about 10 minutes here on the program. 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. And again, on Twitter, at the back page, we can hash it all out. Thanks to Jeff, who's listening and chiming in on Twitter. I appreciate it, Jeff. So Odell Beckham Jr. is talking about different teams that he could wind up with. Vlad and I were just talking about this on the show last night, as a matter of fact. And we had brought up the idea, hey, maybe a reunion with the Giants. Sorry, Giants fans, that's not one of the teams that's listed in this story. It doesn't mean he couldn't wind up there, because who knows if any of these teams would want him that are talking about. So Marcus Spears, who does a good job with ESPN, was on Twitter, and Beckham was chatting with Marcus Spears and asked him to name who he felt the best 5 fits for Beckham would be. Isn't that great? Can you imagine Odell Beckham Jr. hitting you up and be like, hey, who do you think's best? So Marcus Spears said the Chiefs, the Packers, the Rams, the Bills, and the Ravens. And Beckham replied with, we see eye to eye. That's going to get some excitement in those 5 cities. Or is it? Knowing, the headaches that Odell Beckham Jr. can come with, and let's be honest, he comes with headaches. Ask the Giants. Ask the Browns. Now, it seemed like for the brief time he was there, he was a model citizen, I think, with the Rams, unless there's something I missed, before he got hurt. Could he wind up back in Los Angeles with the Rams? The way they've been playing out of the gate, I'm sure they would love to have him back. The Chiefs? I think the Chiefs can win without him. I don't think they need to add that to the mix. The Packers? Oh my God, yes. But can you imagine the first time that, he doesn't get a ball thrown his way and he throws a fit on the sideline with Aaron Rodgers as the starting quarterback? Might make for some good TV, though. The Bills would be an interesting fit. Didn't T.O. go there at the end of his career? Not saying that OBJ is at the end of his career, by the way. Yeah, but you would have thought Terrell Owens in Buffalo was kind of a weird fit. But that would be interesting. The idea of a Odell Beckham Jr. with the Bills. But again, that offense is already really good. And then the Ravens. You got Lamar Jackson running around, creating extra time for receivers, and a guy like Odell Beckham Jr. potentially on the other end. I think the two best fits would probably be the Rams and the Packers. But again, I wonder about the dynamic of an Odell Beckham Jr. in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers. I think it can work with, a quarterback like Mahomes. I think it can work. I think we already know it did work with Stafford. I think it could work with Lamar Jackson. Not sure about the Buffalo Green Bay thing, though. But interesting that Odell is certainly talking about it. And Rodgers this week on Pat McAfee's show, his weekly stop on that program, was complimenting Odell Beckham Jr. Said he and Beckham have been friends for years and have discussed playing together. He said, OBJ and I have been friends for a number of years now. You're always hoping there's a time where you can figure things out and play together. Beckham also supported that idea. After Pat McAfee put that out on Twitter with Aaron Rodgers talking about it, is this the actual audio of that? Do we have that?
The Odell Beckham Jr. Series of tweets.
Here's Aaron Rodgers talking about it.
We have it. It is AR Ace 2 with 3 O's, so that's not just 2, that's 2.
Fire emoji.
Fire, dude. Yeah. Honestly, bro makes it look effortless. Effortless, capital E, because E is for extra, and you're extra effortless, dude. Right. Then Chris Williamson at C Williamson 44, he is on your side. Says a lot of damage could be done with you and Rodgers. Odell Beckham goes, who you telling? That's a different breed right there, pal. Obviously, you have seen this. You're on Twitter all the time. You probably were told this by everybody in your surrounding family. Have you heard about this? And what does this mean to you whenever somebody who's like Odell Beckham Jr. says, hey, this guy's really fucking good at the football?
So there you go. Pat McAfee. Hit the dump button. Oh, man. So Aaron Rodgers obviously loves Odell Beckham Jr. And Odell Beckham Jr. obviously loves Aaron Rodgers. So you could wind up with those two on the same field together. Like I said, I'm just not sure of the dynamic and how it would work between those two. 1-800-224-2004, 800-224-2004. You can hit us up on Twitter at the back page. We'll get into it with Eric Pincus coming up in a couple of minutes. Bleacher Report on the NBA. What does he think of the Draymond Green story? And how about this? I don't know if there's ever been more conversation about the G League. I don't think there's ever been more conversation about the G League than there is right now. I mean, there might be G League games that get better ratings than baseball playoff games this year when you've got Victor Wembanyama out on the floor. And this kid, Scoot Henderson, who are expected to basically go 1-2 in the NBA draft next year. I mean, these are two really good players. Could be potentially franchise-changing players. There's only one problem. They could potentially wind up playing in crappy markets. And I don't know how much the league's going to like that. Eric Pincus on the other side, Bleacher Report. I'm Jason Page. It's the Cash In on Sports Map Radio. Tell me you hit the dump button. Thank you. I should have previewed that sound. That's on me. Sorry about that. I forget that McAfee can basically swear whenever he wants. So I'm sorry about that. I'm just glad you were paying attention. joins the show. Let's say hi to Eric Pincus, does a great job. Bleacher Report. Also, he's terrific when it comes to the salary cap and just talking all things NBA and business as well. Eric Pincus joins us here on the Cash In on Sports Map Radio. It's been a minute, Eric. Good to have you on the show. I got to start with the Draymond Green thing because I was talking about it at the top. Yeah, the Warriors, here's the thing that bothers me about this, I guess. I feel like there's a bit of hypocrisy because the Warriors always like to sort of stand up for right and wrong, and they always kind of give you this vibe that they're an organization that prides themselves on doing things the right way. And then I see the way they handle this Draymond Green thing, which is to basically say, these things happen. We're not going to suspend them. We're going to, handle it internally. And to me, it just feels a bit hypocritical for this organization that in so many regards likes to speak out against right and wrong, that they're sort of just glossing this over as, these things happen.
Yeah, that's a lot to chew on right there. It's a tough situation. I mean, the stories that were written were very, they were descriptive, but they weren't they didn't carry the heft of what we saw with the video that leaked. And I mean, it's a shocking video when you see that full punch. And I think the Warriors, it is an area where there's a certain amount of maybe panic and how to deal with it. I mean, I don't know if there's, you wake up and there's a day that you expect to have. This is not like the day they expected to have. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't. And I some people were telling me, how come other players didn't, step up to protect Poole? And I'm like, it happened so fast.
Yes.
It was so out of the blue that I don't think anyone even had a clue. I would venture to say half the team didn't even know what happened, until it was over. And I don't want to necessarily come down hard on the Warriors. You have to understand, it is a business. There's always some level of trying to clean things up and sanitize things. Yes, they try to, Steve Kerr is very outspoken about a lot of social issues. The ownership group very much likes to flout that they do things the right way when it comes to building a team and that they're just better at it than other franchises. And maybe they are. They've got a lot of rings in the last, decade. They've got 5. So, some of it is just, they have a bigger bankroll. They're richer than some other teams. And that allows them to spend money in ways that other teams can't. But they also have done really good, good things at building a roster that's been sustainable and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not going to hold it against them and say, it's too hypocritical. I get that sometimes things happen that are just so beyond the norm. It's going to take a moment to figure out even how to process it and how to handle it and what's the next step? What do we do here? And, you're getting hounded by, I was dealing with text messages all day and writing and dealing with this stuff all freaking day. I can only imagine what they're going through.
Let me ask you a question. And this, again, it's one to think about. Can they win without Draymond Green? Are they still, are they a title contender still without Draymond Green?
I don't think they can win without Draymond Green. I've talked to a lot of different people around the league, and I've talked to agents and I've talked to executives, and I've talked to, I spent all day doing this. I mean, this is all I did from the moment I woke up. I didn't get out of bed for 2 hours, literally, just trying to deal with this kind of stuff. I woke up to my editor's text and you got to see the video. What do you, all that kind of stuff.
But Eric, they can win. They can win without Kevin Durant. You're telling me they can't win without Draymond Green?
Because you can get guys who can score the ball. There are guys in the end. And look, Kevin Durant's a brilliant player. I don't want to say anything negative about Kevin Durant. He's one of the best players of his generation. But getting guys to score the ball is one thing. Getting guys who can impact the game at a high level without scoring is a lot harder to do. And Draymond Green, of his era, is one of the most important players that the league has had because he is incredibly impactful defensively. He's the quarterback. He's the Steph Curry of the team's defense. He can guard any position. I remember when I first saw the Warriors play in the playoffs against the Clippers, when they were not the Warriors yet. They were still the Warriors, but no one knew who the heck they were. And it was just like, yeah, there's some whatever. And I'm like, why can't Blake Griffin score on this second round dude that's like not supposed to be anything in Draymond Green? And, you know, you feel, oh, what's wrong with Blake? What's wrong with Blake? At some point you realize, no, it's not Blake. It's that Draymond is like a historically great defender. But then additionally, that's a team where teams trap Curry. That's how you beat them, is you send everything to get the ball out of Steph's hands, make sure he doesn't get it back. But the problem is you get the ball to Draymond Green, and he can create in a mismatch situation as far as numbers, because you got two guys on Steph. In a 4-on-3, he can get the ball to the right guy, and they have so many shooters. So he's basically, the way that they exist, the way that they are, who they are, is defined by Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And then you get a bunch of role players, be it Jordan Poole, who's a role player. He's a scoring role player. He does nothing else but score. To me, Draymond Green is way more valuable. But then when we start talking about where they're going and who they're going to be in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, Draymond's older now, and he's tailing off. I'm not going to pretend he's still Draymond Green in his prime. He's not. But I do think that who they are right now, they can't win without him. At some point in the next few years, they're going to have to if they want to keep winning. So they're searching for that next, combination of players that'll win a championship. But I don't think Draymond's just too old. And at this point, given the negativity here, it might take a minute for them to figure out what to do next. But they can't win right now without him.
Spending some time with Eric Pincus, joins us here on the Cash In Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. The story about Draymond Green obviously coming out, and we'll see how the Warriors decide to handle it. One last thing on this. And I know you're probably tired of talking about it, but, I think the video changes a bit in terms of, because they obviously never thought this video would come out. And as somebody who's probably been around plenty of NBA practices, who got this video? I mean, in a closed practice to media.
Yep. They're investigating. They're going to try to find out. Someone's going to lose their job. TMZ, and I don't begrudge them what they do, but TMZ pays for information. I worked for the LA Times. I worked for Bleacher Report. We just don't operate that way. I didn't operate that way with the LA Times. It's just, I do my job. I try to get information. If I'm bartering, it's bartering in information, right? Like, I'll share information that I know with someone who can give me information on what I'm looking for, but I don't buy information. They do. So someone got a decent amount of money to give up something that's a huge story for TMZ and TMZ Sports, all that. The Warriors will do their best to investigate, but there are people who are operating there, that are working there, that are just people that are, they're not named people as far as, NBA names, but they are operational people who are part of the support staff. Might be the person whose job it is to, make sure the water, the Gatorade, I have no idea who this is, but, they're not getting paid enough. You know how expensive it is to live in Northern California, around San Francisco, around that area? I mean, I live in LA, and it's expensive in LA, but I go to San Francisco and I'm like, geez, this stuff is expensive. So, they may lose their job, but maybe they'll get away with this one.
Give me some thoughts, Eric. And who would have thought I'd ever be doing an interview with Eric Pincus and we're talking about G League guys? But, Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson, I mean, there's conversation around the G League that we've never heard in the history of this, sort of NBA minor league system with these two guys. And there was the thought out there that after everybody saw them play against each other, why would Wembanyama still want to even play? Just sit him out for the season. God forbid he gets hurt. Your thoughts on sort of what we've seen out of those two guys?
Well, I mean, the G League itself is the minor league system, but what they've grown is beyond just, providing marginal NBA players with a home to get to the NBA. Instead of having to go play overseas, you can play locally and you have a better shot against the NBA. But they've also started the G League Ignite program, which is getting students who don't necessarily want to go to college and have an alternate path. Instead of going to college for a year, you go to the Ignite, or, in Scoot's case, he's a 2-year guy playing at this level where you're playing against professionals. You're playing against guys in the G League who are really talented, but are just like a hair below NBA talent. And a lot of NBA talent, a lot of them develop into NBA talent. So that's the framework of like a Scoot Henderson, who's like a really, athletic point guard, scorer. He can't shoot that well yet, but he impressed. His second game, they played 2 games. Second game, he didn't do anything, had a minor injury, and they sat him out. But he's a heck of a player. But he's really the consolation prize in this draft. This kid, I'm going to try to say it right, Victor Wembanyama. It's probably the first time I've said it right. If I'm close.
You're good.
I've been working on it. He's a French kid who's going to be in the draft, the number 1 pick. I don't think there's any question. The response that first of all, the eye test. You watch the kid and you're like, this kid's 7'4"-ish. They showed him with Rudy Gobert, and like Rudy Gobert is like, small compared to this kid. And yeah, like I worry a little bit about guys that are that big in the NBA. That can be a little difficult to stay healthy, but he's closer to a Kevin Durant than he is to like a Shaq or even a Yao Ming. Like he's got this incredible touch on his jump shot. He's got footwork. He's just like like literally maybe the best prospect to come into the league since the LeBrons and the Tim Duncans, the guys who are number 1 picks who you tank for. This is that kid. And what was really nice is his team was down by a whole bunch in the first game, and he just poured it on, scored over 30 points. And yeah, his team lost, but that go to, I want the ball, I got to get our team some baskets. And he's just, you know what it is? If you have like an NBA 2K and you create a player and you just jack all the settings up to 10, that's this kid. It's like, okay, I want him to be able to shoot. I want him to, it's ridiculous. So, LeBron's there at the game watching courtside. AD's there, but the whole NBA's there. And there are going to be teams that are just flat. There's a reason why the Spurs traded DeJounte Murray. He's just on your radar tonight, maybe, but he's been on the Spurs radar for longer than tonight. That's why they're saying, okay, if we're going to be bad, this is the year to be bad. That's how Greg Popovich says this all the time. The reason he's Greg Popovich is because he had Tim Duncan. If they don't get Tim Duncan, he's just another guy who gets fired, right? They're looking for their next Tim Duncan, and I don't know if Wembanyama will be that, but looking at him, he's just a cheat code. He's just ridiculous. So the NBA is in good hands.
Eric Pincus, I always enjoy it. I'm glad we got to catch up. It's been a while. Let's do it again as we get into the season. Bleacher Report does a terrific job there. Check him out on Twitter at Eric Pincus, Pincus. Good to catch up with you, my man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Anytime. Thanks, Robbie.
Love Eric Pincus. We'll come back, wrap up this hour of the Cash In on Sports Map Radio. He's a cheat code. I love it. So it's pretty easy for the podcast tonight. The first segment where I talk about the Mets, and then the 3 interviews. All right, we are approaching the top of the hour. Final hour of the week right around the corner on Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. I'll tell you, I'm very impressed with what we saw out of the Mariners today. I mean, that is, to me, obviously the Max Scherzer blow-up tonight was bad and certainly something that has to raise some eyebrows around the Mets when you look at the last two starts for him, which were the two biggest starts of the year for the team, and him just basically rolling up into the fetal position and struggling the way he did. But what the Mariners did, first playoff game in 21 years, none of these guys were on that team. There ain't no Ken Griffey Jr. walking through that door. Ain't no Edgar Martinez walking through that door, right? And for them to go into Toronto and win 4-0, I mean, that is impressive stuff, and all the pressure is on Toronto in that game two, that pivotal game two, obviously. That win or go home game two. Yu Darvish was good tonight, too. The Mets kind of threatened. The Mets were able to get some runners on base. They can run on Darvish, and that is the problem with Darvish, man. You can just run on him all day. He takes forever to get the ball to home plate. If you get runners on, you can run on him. But he found a way to get it done. We're back with another hour of the Cash In. Good to be with you on this Friday night, Sports Map Radio.
FTR is trying here. It's going to take a great double team move. FTR is trying.
Right, there was a streak of 21 straight years. General vibe and feel from the fan base is you broke the streak. Right, there was a streak of 21 straight years where you were not in the play.
Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. We'll get the Blue Jays perspective. Final hour of a Friday/Saturday edition of the Cash In. Thanks for being with us. Sports Map Radio, the Sports Map Radio app. Our first week on in Dallas. Hello to our friends listening on 97.1 The Freak. Boy, what kind of mood will Cowboy fans be in on Monday when we return with another week of shows? I think they're going to be in a good mood. I like them. I don't just like the Cowboys this week. I love the Cowboys this week. A little clue as to what is to come in Paige's picks. About 45 minutes from now, maybe 40 minutes from now. Just a little sneak peek. Mets got pounded tonight 7-1 at home to the San Diego Padres in Game 1 of the Wild Card Series. Max Scherzer got lit up like a Clark Griswold Christmas tree. Here was his manager, Buck Showalter, after the game.
He doesn't live in. He learns some things and he moves on. There was nothing. He'll be in the dugout tomorrow, pulling for Jake and our club, and hoping he gets another chance to pitch for us. But it's just a competitive nature. You can imagine how he must. How frustrating it is for him, but his command is the thing that is frustrating for him. He's got good stuff, but usually when he can command 3 pitches and sometimes 4, it's fun to watch. But he had a pitch on Bell in the home run. He's trying to throw a ball a certain place that leaked completely away from where he wanted to, and that's what was frustrating for him.
Yeesh. That's what happens. $43 million doesn't get you what it used to. Buck, after the game, asked about who would pitch game 2.
Yeah, Jake will pitch tomorrow.
There you go. Jacob deGrom will pitch tomorrow, so the Mets season will be on Jacob deGrom's arm. Just the way it should be. Right? Another hour of the cash-in is ahead of us. It's worse than you even think it is when it comes to Russell Wilson. What am I talking about? I'll explain. It's the cash-in on Sports Map Radio. Stay with us. All right, if you missed it, in the first hour, we talked with Jen Muller on the Mariners and Seahawks. And in particular, we got into the Russell Wilson story. That's coming up in the next segment. Also, Paige's picks still to come. And, you know, as much as I'd like to sit here and get philosophical on the whole Antonio Brown thing, the direction this guy's life is headed right now, you hope there's somebody out there that can sort of pull him off the third rail, because it just feels like he's living perilously close to it. And it just feels like whatever happens with Antonio Brown, it's just not going to be a happy ending. So you hope there's somebody that could get to him. Some sort of figure that can calm him down, so to speak, because his life just seems to be an absolute tatters right now. We'll get to that coming up in a few minutes. So as bad as Russell Wilson was last night, and as bad as it was for the Broncos to go to 2-3, and I said last night though, there's going to be a bunch of teams that are 2-3 because there's a lot of 2-2 teams right now around the league. And the difference between 2-3 and 3-2, as you very well know, is one game. And in a 17-game season, there's a lot of time. And when you look at the AFC, yeah, there's a few good teams, but there's also a lot of mediocre, sort of middle-of-the-pack teams. And I'm not saying that the Broncos are going to go from being mediocre, middle-of-the-pack to suddenly being a contender for a Super Bowl, but they have to be better than this. There's no way Russell Wilson's going to go this entire season playing this way. Or is he? Just a sneak peek from my conversation with Jen Muller of Root Sports, who covered Russell basically his entire career in Seattle and does a great job on all things Seattle sports for Root Sports. When I asked her about how Seattle is sort of viewing this Russell Wilson situation, listen to what she said. What's the vibe or the reaction of fans? And you talk to people, you talk to the organization, you talk to players. What's the feel around this whole Russell Wilson situation? I mean, somebody's got to be asking people about it up there, about the fact that he does not look himself right now when you watch him with the Denver Broncos, whether it's new head coach, whether it's new plays being called, whether it's new set of receivers. It's just not clicking. What's the feeling in Seattle around this?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, if I were to point to some numbers and you say, well, it doesn't look like Russell Wilson, there are a couple of numbers that look like Russell Wilson. Their third down conversion numbers are pretty bad. Seattle was not converting over 50%. Heck, they were converting at about 40% or less in each of the last 6 or 7 years. Seattle's now converting at 55% on third down. So what you saw last night, we have seen that for stretches in Seattle. It just didn't look the same necessarily. Also, the number of times Russ has been sacked, that has been pretty consistent. And I don't think it's as much on the offensive line as people here in Seattle wanted to make it. I think the biggest reaction is there was conversation at the end of last year about, is it Pete or is it Russ? Which one should go? Should Pete go? Should Russ go? Who should have more power in the organization, sort of thing? When Russ left, I think there was a general sentiment of, oh, perhaps they kept the wrong guy. I mean, do you really want Pete Carroll continuing? Because his philosophy appears to be old school.
So obviously that's worked out kind of well, the decision to stick with Pete Carroll over Russell Wilson, at least so far. But she pointed out some very interesting numbers that are very similar to his time in Seattle. And it gets worse for the Broncos because their starting offensive tackle, Bowles, is lost for the season to IR. And Russell Wilson, when you stack him up against the other quarterbacks in the NFL through the first 5 weeks of the season, and PFF did a great job with this, you know, the numbers don't lie. There's nothing sort of hidden in here. There's nothing in the statistics when you watch this game and watch the way he's played through the first 5 weeks that tells you it's going to get better. There aren't any real glimmers of hope out there. And that's got to be frightening for a Broncos organization that signed this guy to a 5-year contract for $250 million. I mean, he had a 40.9 overall PFF grade, a 38.5 passing grade. He now is 26th among 32 quarterbacks. And he's played just one game that earned him a 65-plus grade with PFF. I mean, it's hard to be worse than Russell Wilson has been through the first 5 weeks. For a guy that you didn't just expect him to make you better. You expected him to turn you into a Super Bowl contender because you've got a Super Bowl caliber defense. And when Pro Football Focus puts out these types of numbers on Russell Wilson through the first 5 games, where's the indication that it's going to get better? From 2012 to 2020, he played with a 94.5 overall PFF grade. Last year, he dropped off to 73.9. And some people might argue that was because he rushed back too soon. He had the broken finger, week 5. He tried to get back out there too soon. Some might say that's the reason why Russell Wilson the number dropped last year. But maybe it wasn't. And he's getting sacked a lot this year, and I don't know how much of that's going to change. And he's a 33-year-old. He's got a lot of mileage on him at this point. Is this fixable? One scout told PFF, quote, "It takes time. You don't just roll out there and play ball and think you're going to win the Super Bowl. I have no idea why people were hyping that so fast." The same unnamed scout says he believes Wilson's issues are fixable, though they might not come this season given the offense's current state. What state? You mean California? It's Boogie Nights. Got to see the movie. I'm not shooting you in the state you're in. But it's rough right now if you're the Broncos. And like I said, there's no signs it's going to get any better. I mean, after the game last night, somebody said there was a scene in the locker room where it was just basically Russell Wilson still sitting in his shirt and pads and Nathaniel Hackett over there just talking to him. And this has to be rough on Russell Wilson. I mean, this is a guy that wants to win. This isn't a guy that's mailed it in, that was just, hoping he can get one more big contract and then walk away. He saw what happened when Tom Brady left after spending his entire career with the Patriots, how he was able to go to Tampa Bay and was able to win a Super Bowl. He wanted that sort of fairy tale ending for him in Denver. And how do you know it's bad? When your hometown local TV station is apologizing to viewers for subjecting them to awful football. That's what happened last night in Denver. The local TV station in Denver was apologizing to fans for how bad it was. The ABC affiliate, KMGH, apologizing to viewers. "I feel the need to just apologize to the viewers," Nick Rothschild said. "I know we didn't play. We didn't even really run this broadcast. But the fact that you had to watch that on our air, I feel bad. I was here and I didn't even want to watch it. Where do we begin?" Troy Rank added, "It burns the retinas. It was so bad." So, yeah, it's pretty rough. It's pretty rough. All right, we'll hear what Jen Muller has to say as we continue. She covers Seattle sports for Root Sports, the Mariners, and the Seattle Seahawks. What does she say about the Mariners Game 1 win and the Seahawks getting ready to take on the Saints this weekend? Her thoughts on Russell Wilson and more as we continue on the Cash In at Sports Map Radio. Hey, tell me something, Austin. Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. We'll get the Blue Jays' perspective on the Game 1 loss today with Mike Wilner coming up a little later on. But let's get the Mariners' side of it, because that has got to be one happy team right now, being able to go into Toronto and get Game 1 of this divisional series, this wild card series, rather. Let's bring in our friend Jen Mueller, does a terrific job covering not just the Mariners, but the Seahawks. She does it all, gives us some time today on the Cash. And, I said before the postseason started, when I saw the odds come out, and I saw the Mariners at plus 3,000. Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio. Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. We'll get the Blue Jays' perspective on the Game 1 loss today with Mike Wilner coming up a little later on. But let's get the Mariners' side of it, because that has got to be one happy team right now, being able to go into Toronto and get Game 1 of this divisional series, this wild card series, rather. Let's bring in our friend Jen Mueller, does a terrific job covering not just the Mariners, but the Seahawks. Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Continuing on this Friday night edition of the Cash In, Sports Map Radio and the Sports Map Radio app. We'll get the Blue Jays' perspective on the Game 1 loss today with Mike Wilner coming up a little later on. But let's get the Mariners' side of it, because that has got to be one happy team right now, being able to go into Toronto and get Game 1 of this divisional series, this wild card series, rather. Let's bring in our friend Jen Mueller, does a terrific job covering not just the Mariners, but the Seahawks. She does it all, gives us some time today on the Cash. And, I said before the postseason started, when I saw the odds come out, and I saw the Mariners at plus 3,000, they were basically the longest odds of any team in the playoffs. And I said, man, for a value bet, doesn't mean they're going to win. I'm just saying best bang for your buck bet. I thought it was the Mariners, and I watched the way they played today. That didn't look like a team that was scared of the moment, Jen.
No, it didn't. And I think this is where youth plays to Seattle's advantage. And having guys that don't have a whole lot of postseason experience, I know they don't know what to expect, but sometimes being naive and not playing this moment up to be too big really works to their advantage. I also think the fact that it is a 3-game series helps to just kind of keep that same familiarity. I realize it is a win or go home series, and now you are one win away from advancing. But when you just kind of think about the rhythm of a baseball season, going to Toronto and expecting to play up to 3 games, well, that's no different than any other series they've had this year. So I think, youthful naivete and the schedule kind of helps to settle things down for the Mariners. Well, and then there was Luis Castillo.
And I'm so glad you mentioned him, because I was thinking about it today as I was walking back from the car to the condo. This was literally when I thought about it. That's why I say it. And I'm sitting there walking back, and I said to myself, was there a more impactful trade deadline move than Luis Castillo? And Juan Soto got all the headlines, and rightly so. Yeah. He's a 5-tool player, and I know he didn't play well when he got to San Diego, but there's no doubt he's got a great future ahead of him. A lot of people would agree. But in terms of impact, I don't think there was a more impactful deal than this one when you look at what he's done for the top of that rotation. And again, you talk about a guy that's just fearless, and that's the one word that comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think that he flew under the radar just a little bit at the trade deadline because of the team that he was playing with, right? The Reds just weren't any good. So you weren't really looking or giving as much credence maybe to his results than you were to a guy like Juan Soto, who, of course, was putting up numbers and perhaps had a bigger name. But what Luis Castillo has done has been really consistent. It has been very impressive. And today he goes over 7 innings for the second time as a Mariner. And if you look at last year's postseason, and I will give Sarah Langs credit for this on Twitter, look at last postseason. There were 4 times that the starters went 7+ innings. There were 3 instances of that. Today alone, Luis Castillo was one of them, and that is not an outlier for him. He typically goes 6 innings. Looks like he could go more, and boy, he just looks so sharp, man. He's hitting 99 in the first inning. Okay, I would really hate to be those Jays hitters.
And it feels like all the pressure basically shifts to Toronto here. They didn't score a single run in this game, and you got to feel right now, if you're the Mariners, I don't want to say you're playing with house money, but you're certainly find yourself in a situation now where, and look, I mean, in a best of 3, there really is no time to let up, but you watch the way this team played today, and I think you got to feel good about where they're positioned here over the final 2 games. And by the way, I didn't even get to it. How about Andres Munoz? Now, I got to look at him for the first time. I got to look at him for the first time when they played against the Yankees, because I watch all the Yankee games out here on the West Coast. I got the MLB.TV package. And I watched him against the Yankees, and I mean, talk about my eyes being open to this guy. I know he's still young, and a lot of people don't know him.
23.
He threw 103 today and had Vlad Guerrero shaking his head. I mean, my God, this kid is just amazing.
Well, and remember that he was coming off of Tommy John surgery. The Mariners had no idea what to expect from him in spring training. They are hoping, or they were at the time, that he would be the flamethrower that he had been in the Padres organization. He was part of a trade a couple of years ago, but he didn't actually show anything because of the arm injuries until this year. So they were really working him in slowly, and it was low leverage at first, and he wasn't going back to back, and he wasn't pitching more than an inning. And now you talk about the growth and the trust and the stuff and the accuracy. Today was a perfect, culmination of all of that. High leverage, game 1 in a playoff game. You turn to the 23-year-old to finish this one out. He is truly impressive, and his stuff is nasty. You're not going to catch up to 103, and that slider so devastating. Your swing decision has to be made so soon, and then the bottom's going to drop out of it. I mean, yeah.
Talking to our friend Jem Mueller, covers the Seahawks and the Mariners. Root Sports does a terrific job. Hey, a thought on Robbie Ray, because, again, we don't see a ton of Mariners baseball throughout the year. Give me some thoughts on what he was like during the regular season. I know he had a ton of strikeouts. I think he was 5th in the American League in strikeouts. Talk a little bit about his season and kind of what makes him right or not for this moment.
Yeah, I think he's right for this moment because he has played in some big games before, and he's got the right temperament for it. He is also skilled and veteran enough to know how to work himself out of trouble. We have seen that during the course of the year. Now, here's been his bugaboo, and it's not been the case as much lately, but he will run into just a long inning. He'll be cruising along through 3 innings, maybe 4 innings, and then things will get out of control for an inning, and he'll bring him right back on track. Now, the offense can't necessarily back him with the runs needed, but that's kind of the one thing. He's got to stay away from the big inning. But he's made in-game adjustments that are absolutely brilliant, like adding a 2-seamer during the middle of the game against the Astros when Houston was all over him. And then that turns out to be a huge pitch for him to be able to really own both sides of the plate. So I don't think the moment is too big. He is familiar playing in the Rogers Center, having been a Toronto Blue Jay. He is familiar with the swings of his former teammates. I think he is the great game, too. And I do think the Mariners, to some extent, are playing with house money. The general vibe and feel from the fan base is you broke the streak, right? There was a streak of 21 straight years where you were not in the playoffs. The fan base, I don't want to say that they're satisfied, but they're happy, right? Would you like to see them continue to advance and get deep just like this team believes that they can do? Absolutely. But the fan base is happy right now. So you are in some regards playing with house money, for games 2 and 3.
All right. I know you cover the Seahawks as well, getting set to head off to New Orleans to watch them take on the Saints. Just before I get to Seattle in this game, what's the vibe or the reaction of fans? And you talk to people, you talk to the organization, you talk to players. What's the feel around this whole Russell Wilson situation? I mean, somebody's got to be asking people about it up there, about the fact that he does not look himself right now when you watch him with the Denver Broncos, whether it's new head coach, whether it's new plays being called, whether it's new set of receivers. It's just not clicking. What's the feeling in Seattle around this?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, if I were to point to some numbers and you say, well, it doesn't look like Russell Wilson, there are a couple of numbers that look like Russell Wilson. Their third down conversion numbers are pretty bad. Seattle was not converting over 50%. Heck, they were converting at about 40% or less in each of the last 6 or 7 years. Seattle's now converting at 55% on third down. So what you saw last night, we have seen that for stretches in Seattle. It just didn't look the same necessarily. Also, the number of times Russ has been sacked, that has been pretty consistent. And I don't think it's as much on the offensive line as people here in Seattle wanted to make it. I think the biggest reaction is there was conversation at the end of last year about, is it Pete or is it Russ? Which one should go? Should Pete go? Should Russ go? Who should have more power in the organization, sort of thing? When Russ left, I think there was a general sentiment of, oh, perhaps they kept the wrong guy. I mean, do you really want Pete Carroll continuing? Because his philosophy appears to be old school. And I think right now what you're seeing is Pete's philosophy works and Pete's coaching works. And Geno Smith can execute the offense. And, maybe it wasn't quite the picture that they thought it was when Russ was here. He is still beloved in the community for the things that he did. But, on football basis, yeah, there's a lot of fans that might be gloating just a little bit. And they love seeing Geno. The offense looks totally different without Russ. The tight ends are more involved. There's a lot of short yardage plays. But, I don't think there's as many fans as all knotted up over that trade anymore.
I got about 30 seconds here. People are talking about Geno now as a sort of a dark horse MVP candidate with the way he's played.
It's a little early.
It is a lot early, but I mean, he has played that kind of spectacular football. Some people watching the games might be a little bit surprised. Are people in Seattle surprised?
Yes, absolutely. Not what they expected, but they love it. Right? 2-2. You look at that and people are pleasantly surprised. Yep, absolutely.
Jen Mueller, I love you. Covers the Seahawks and the Mariners. Hey, have a safe trip to New Orleans. We'll talk to you down the line. Always appreciate it, my friend.
All right. Take care. Thanks so much.
Love Jen Mueller. How you feeling? Yeah, that's good. Am I talking to you? Thanks to Jen Mueller for stopping by. Had a chance to catch up with her before she hopped on a plane for New Orleans for the Saints and Seahawks. It's an interesting game. Very interesting game. Andy Dalton at quarterback for the Saints. You know what Geno Smith has done. And it's amazing to me. The Saints are a 5.5-point favorite in that game. And they're 1-3. And Seattle can put up points. And the Saints haven't been particularly good defensively. Just something about that line is fishy to me. I don't really understand it. Doesn't make a lot of sense. And I almost put it in Paige's picks, which we'll have coming up for you here in a couple of minutes, but there's something about that game. On paper, it feels like Seattle plus 5.5 would be the pick there. But I don't know. Something stinks about it. Something stinks, and I don't know what it is. What is going on with Antonio Brown? First, you had the porn video. Then you had the video of him in the pool and waving his you-know-what around to some woman who he's body slamming in the pool. And apparently she wasn't very happy about it in Dubai. And we know their track record with women's rights, so it's not like that woman has much of a chance of doing anything to Antonio Brown. And then this story. And again, I'm not rooting. A lot of people like to watch dumpster fires, right? Everybody likes, remember the old days? Oh, God, I'm going to date myself. But remember the old days of American Idol? When you tune in just to watch the train wrecks that they called auditions. You wanted to see William Hung go, she bang, she bang. You wanted to see that. You wanted to see Simon Cowell just make somebody cry and walk off the stage telling them they're not going to Hollywood. You wanted that. It's the train, it's the car crash thing where you drive by a car wreck and everybody slows down and rubbernecks. And you're hoping the head rolls out the door. But then when it does, you're like, oh no, I didn't want to see that. No, you did. Otherwise you wouldn't have been driving at 5 miles an hour and backing up traffic. You want to see it. Everybody's got that little bit of voyeur in them. They want to see it. And there's some people that, love watching the Antonio Brown real life dumpster fire that's taking place right now. There's people that love it. I'm not one of them, though. The latest headline on Complex: Antonio Brown accused of selling a fake Richard Mille watch for $160,000. According to TMZ, Antonio Brown is being sued for allegedly selling a fake Richard Mille watch. The plaintiff, identified as Florida resident Ryan Kane, filed the complaint in Broward County earlier this week, more than 2 months after the transaction went down. Kane alleges the defendant presented the watch, an RM011 model, as authentic and claimed it was worth more than $400,000. Kane ultimately took Brown's word, bought the timepiece for $160,000. However, it was long before he learned the watch was a fake. Several weeks after he got the watch, he took it to an appraiser for insurance purposes. It was at that time, according to Kane, he was informed the watch was only worth about $200. He did some digging, learned Brown had purchased the knockoff and a few others like it for less than $500 a piece while he was in, wait for it, Dubai. It's unclear how the defendant came across the information, but it's worth pointing out Brown was recently accused of stealing $122,000 worth of jewelry in Dubai. Kane wants his money back plus interest. Brown is yet to publicly comment on the lawsuit. And look, it's just, how much longer does this go on? There's no happy ending in this Antonio Brown story. There's no way it ends well. when you have a guy that's kind of gone off the rails the way he has. Exposing himself. Then he's on Twitter trying to defend himself. He lives his life on social media as much as he can. And then he's, playing the victim. Everybody's coming after me. Quote, every chance they get to sway the heat off themselves, they use me. In the video, you can clearly see she runs off with my swim trunks. If roles were reversed, the headlines would read, AB having a wild night with nude female. Yet when it's me, it automatically becomes a hate crime, he continued. It's crazy to me that even after I retire, there's disinformation coming out about me. Ironically, during a time when the NFL is getting heat for allowing players to play when they're clearly concussed, they've been using black men as guinea pigs. To everybody else, it's never Antonio Brown. Wasn't him when he played his way out of Pittsburgh, talked himself out of Pittsburgh. Wasn't him when he threatened the general manager in Oakland with the Raiders. Wasn't him when, wasn't me. It wasn't him when it was a situation where he took off his uniform in the middle of a game, stripped off his uniform, and walked off the field shirtless at MetLife Stadium against the Jets. No, it wasn't him then either. It's everybody else. And when you surround yourself with yes people, and I talk about this all the time, there's one thing I will never do, and that's surround myself with a bunch of sycophants who tell me how amazing I am. There's just no way to grow in that sort of environment. Hangers-ons, there's nothing good that can come from that. And that's what Antonio Brown has chosen to do during his career and post-playing career. And there's nobody that can seem to help him at this point. That's why there's likely no happy ending to the Antonio Brown saga. Without any further delay, my favorite part of the week, just giving you winners. It's time for Paige's Picks. Yes. Let's do it. Paige's Picks. Week 5 in the NFL. We give you 4 winners, or we try to. We're 9-8 on the season on the NFL. Game number 1. I've been talking about it all week. Cowboys plus 5.5 on the road in Los Angeles against the Rams. Let's get after it. I am drinking the Kool-Aid on the Dallas Cowboys. I never thought I would ever hear the day I said that. Give me more Cooper Rush. You've heard more cowbell? I want more Cooper Rush. The guy plays mistake-free football. He'll need to do that on the road against a beleaguered Rams team that's just gone through the motions in the early part of this year. The Super Bowl hangover is real. Dallas is getting 5.5. I think they're going to win on the field. Money line is plus 198, but I'm talking about the line, so we'll just say plus 5.5. Love the Cowboys. That defense is Super Bowl caliber. Shut down Cooper Kupp, you shut down the Rams. They can't run the football. I love Dallas. On the road, plus 5.5. I hope I don't live to regret it. Take the Cowboys. Did I say 5.5? Yeah, it's 5.5. All right, game number 2. Loved the Lions all week. Not anymore. I don't normally mention games that I'm not picking, but I mentioned this because early in the week, I was all over the Lions. Taking on the Patriots, who have all sorts of issues at quarterback, and Bailey Zapp is likely to be starting this week. But the Lions got issues. DeAndre Swift is hurt. Their receiver, St. Brown, is hurt. And Swift and St. Brown are out, so am I. Not touching the Lions and Patriots. That is not game 2. Game 2, though, is the Jaguars, -7 at home against the Texans. Jags have given up about as many points as the Texans have scored. How do the Jags handle prosperity? Now we're going to find out. They're 2-2. People are wise to them. They think that this Jaguar team could potentially win the AFC South. I agree with what I've seen through the first 4 weeks. Coming off a game where they turned it over 743 times, or roughly thereabouts. I love the Jags for the big bounce-back win. We know how bad the Texans are. Jags -7. If you can, buy the hook. Get it down to 6.5 to be safe, but I still like the Jags -7. Game number 2. Number 3, let's go to Carolina, the 49ers and the Panthers. I'm not typically keen on taking teams who have to travel across the country 3 time zones, but the 49ers are the exception. That defense, much like the Cowboys, who I love, Super Bowl caliber. The Panthers can't score. Baker Mayfield ain't going to throw it much. He ain't going to be able to because he's going to be on his backside most of the game. You're going to have 2 teams running it a lot, playing it safe. You don't take too many chances with Jimmy Garoppolo. He probably doesn't love that. But it means the 49ers probably win. But I'm talking about the total here. Under 38.5. Neither team can score. They'll both run it a lot. That means the clock is running. 38.5 is a minuscule number, but it's that low for a reason. Neither of these teams can score. Under 38.5, the 49ers and Panthers. That's game number 3. I got one more under for you. Vikings and Bears in Minnesota. It's my pick of the week. It's the Stone Cold Lock. Big, big, big. You know how I love unders. Get them where you can. Eric Casillas turned me on to the under last year, and I'm sticking with it. The Vikings and Bears in Minneapolis. All right. Hammer the under on this game. Here's the reality. The Chicago Bears have averaged 16 points per game this year. Some of that's coming from their defense. That's how bad they've been on the offensive side of the ball with Justin Fields. On the road, 43.5 is the number. That's astonishingly high because it means they think Minnesota's going to score a lot. And the Bears' defense hasn't been terrible. But it's not to the degree where I don't think Minneapolis can't score. They're going to score some points. Minneapolis will win. 20-10, 23-7, 23-10. Either way, it's way under 43.5. That number's way too high. Hammer the under. Take the under. Vikings and Bears, 43.5. So the picks are the Cowboys plus 5.5 on the road in Los Angeles. The Jaguars -7 at home. 49ers and Panthers under 38.5. Vikings and Bears under 43.5. Page's picks. Week 5 in the NFL. Here on the Cash In. If you miss anything on the show, make sure to check out the Cash In podcast. It's available wherever you pick up your podcasts. I'll put out a link to it on the Twitter feed as soon as the show ends at the back page. Go and find me there. We'll come back, wrap up this edition of the Cash In next on Sports Map Radio. Good job. Let's wrap it up. All right, before we say goodbye, a reminder, go check out our friends, our first full-time sponsor on the Cash In. It's Jock MKT. Think of it as your jock market. Not the stock market, but the jock market. And whereas in the stock market, you're trading stocks, in jock market, you're trading stars. Stop betting, start trading, make real money every minute, every second of every game. Stay in the game with Jock MKT. Go and download the app now. Claim your 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's right. All you got to do is use promo code CASHIN when you go to make your deposit. Matter of fact, if you go on my Twitter feed at the back page, you'll see a link in one of my tweets today to that promo code. All you got to do is download the Jock MKT app. You could also go to jockmkt.com and go and check it out for yourself. Claim your 100% deposit bonus and have some fun this weekend with some of your favorite star athletes. Or maybe you go and find that hidden gem and you'll be cashing in when the football's all done on Sunday or when golf's done or when baseball's done. Jock Market, you can do it with everything. jockmkt.com. Claim your 100% deposit bonus. Use promo code CASHIN. Do it now. I promise you will not regret it. I've checked out the app. It's really cool. It's a different way to do fantasy. I promise you're going to enjoy it. Thank you to executive producer Vladimir Lewis, Austin Rodriguez producing and engineering it back in Houston. Thanks to Jen Mueller. Thank you to Mike Wilner. Thank you to Eric Pincus. We're back here with you on Monday, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific on the Cash In on Sports Map Radio. I'm Jason Page. Bye! All right, my man. Nice job. You got everything you need for the podcast, and we're good to go. You got it, my man. Thank you. Have a great weekend, all right? Be safe. All right, bye-bye. That's it. We are done. Donezo. Make sure to check out Jock MKT if you haven't done so already. Download the app, make your first deposit, use the promo code CASHIN, 100% deposit bonus for all you guys that try it out. Let me know how you like it. Shoot me a note on Twitter at the back page. Everybody have a great weekend. Stay safe. Enjoy the baseball. Enjoy the football. We'll see you back here on Monday. Matter of fact, we'll see you back here Sunday. I'll do Page's picks. And that's it. Enjoy your weekend. I'll try to do the same. See you all on Monday.